Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me tonight. And hey, thanks for all the new subscribers that came to my channel. It's really great to see everybody jump on this platform. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all of my work over the last year. I have a whole bunch of bathrooms I'm editing and putting things together. But tonight, we're finally going to get into this day 6, part 1 of a 7-day bathroom remodel. So if you guys could please give me a like on this video coming in here, it really helps out the algorithm. I know you hear that from every creator out there, but it really does make a difference. And I think lately, what you guys have been able to do with subscribing and liking has really kicked a lot of my videos out there. So it really has given me a lot of great feedback and energy to continue to move forward on this. But the platform tonight is going to be day 6 of a 7-day bathroom. So you're basically getting to the finish line of finishing that bathroom. And if you have not seen my other live streams prior to this, I have them all on my YouTube channel. You can go there under the playlist. I'll show you that in a minute. But basically, this was a 7-day bathroom that I did this summer in real time with the filming. And so I basically, this whole course is going to be basically how to go about it and do it in that time, that time period. So all of the methods and everything that I kind of portray in here is something that I've honed down in the last 14 years of doing bathroom remodeling. I've just basically been doing one after another for the last 14 years, and I've kind of honed things down to a certain pattern, and that's what I really want to share with you with this course. So you'll be able to see this all on YouTube, on the live streams. What I'm hoping to get out of these live streams is that I get some real interaction with you guys. So if you have any questions, I'll pause the video. We'll go over some of those highlighted points. I might search on the internet to get your answers, but really, I want this to be an interactive way of going about it. And then also, it's just a way for somebody who might not want to purchase my course. They can just be on these live streams watching and learning basically how to do that. So we'll get right into it here. I'm going to move that. Josh, if you're in this chat, thanks so much for joining. If you guys haven't seen Excellent Laborers channel, click on his profile button there. He has a really great channel, a lot of great information, new home construction. There's a lot of great videos there. He definitely knows his stuff. So it's great to see you come. So thanks so much for being here. So let me make sure that this is live because I don't really have, let me see here. Yeah, we are live. Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah, Modern Homestead. Thanks, man. Thanks for being here as well. So again, when you guys, if anybody that's on here has a question about anything, leave it here in the comments. I'll try to pause the video and go into it, but we're going to get right into it tonight because yesterday we went through like the recap of 1 through 5. So the first 5 days of the remodel, we kind of do a recap to go over everything. So if you've missed that, definitely check that out. So let me shrink myself down here, and so that you can see what's going on here. There we go. So again, this is going to be day 6 of in part 1, because I break it up just because these live streams end up going on for about an hour or so, and I want to give time to answer some questions and stuff. So but day 6 is really going to be about being organized with your day. You need to stay focused because there's a lot of timing issues with the grouting to dry and the paint to dry, obviously. So we'll get into the curriculum of what's going on day 6, but it is a time-sensitive day, and you really want to stay focused with that, and that's what I hope this course is going to help you out with. So if you haven't been to my channel, I'm assuming most of you have since you are on here now, but if you go to playlists on my channel here, you can find all of these live streams on this bathroom remodeling course here underneath bathroom remodeling online course. So just click on here and you'll see day 1 through 5 basically. So basically I don't know why that image didn't change, but yesterday's live stream, I was not able to go into the course because they were doing maintenance on the site. So that's why I'm back here tonight doing the same presentation, but I'm just not going through the whole recap. So you can find all of this here, and you'll be able to follow along and leave comments in those areas as well. And I could definitely help you out there as well. But just to give you a recap kind of what this bathroom is. So this is actually the actual quote I gave the client this summer, and it's, June 6th. I ended up doing it in July. So most of these videos, I am sweating like crazy because it was so hot during that summer. It was almost 100 degrees, I think, when I was working on this bathroom. Josh, good to see you. Love your content and your work. Did you split with the? Yeah, I did. Yeah, Josh, I definitely did. I might even get into that a little bit later tonight, but yeah, it's a real shame, and that's why I started my own platform. But hey, you know what? I think I might thank him someday, because I really get to have full control and be able to do everything that I kind of wanted to do in the first place. And these live streams is definitely something that I wanted to do, and I'm finding so much enjoyment out of this. An hour and a half goes by with not even thinking about it. You guys draw out a bunch of questions out of me, and then I can just go back in my mind of all the jobs I've done. And I'm still trying to figure out how many bathrooms I've actually done in my career. And that's really tough to rack my brain, because we didn't have really good cell phones at the beginning of my career. I started in the year 2000s when I actually started my actual business. And so we didn't really have a lot of good cameras and stuff. Troy, good to see you here. Thanks for coming. So anyways, this is just a standard bathroom. So this is probably what most of you have in your hallway bathroom or your main bathroom in your house. It's just a 5 by 8 foot bathroom. And it just has a standard tub, 30-inch tub, toilet, 30-inch vanity. All pretty simple. But what I wanted, what I'm hoping this whole course and what I'm outlaying here is just gives you some idea of what might be under all of this stuff and what kind of issues might be uncovered, and how to go about problem solving the issues. So, but the big thing about this 5 by 8 bathroom, we didn't just replace one, we replaced everything. So we took out everything in the home or in that bathroom, taking all the drywall out, inspecting the plumbing, inspecting electrical. That's a very, very important thing in my mind. I honestly have stopped taking bathroom jobs when people just want a tub and a tub surround. I have no interest in just doing one part of the bathroom, because there's always usually problems associated with the rest of the bathroom, and it's harder to install a tub and do tile work and do all of that and trying to keep all of the other existing stuff. So my thoughts are, if you're going to do a bathroom remodel, do it right, gut it all the way down, start over again. And one of the main reasons this course was putting this together is just to simplify the process. Now, not all of you are going to be able to do this in 7 days, but at least you have a game plan of going about how to do that. And if you stay focused, I do believe, even if you have a full-time job and you were able to take a week off, I really feel confident you'll be able to at least have a functional bathroom by the end of that week. And then, at least you can use it so that your family is comfortable, and then you can move on to the rest of it when you have more time. But I don't really see any reason why you wouldn't be able to accomplish at least having, being able to take a shower and use your toilet, and I don't know about the vanity, but that could be kind of problematic putting in temporarily. But at least having the core parts of the bathroom functional, because I know if you have one bathroom, it's a very big stress point. And hey, contractors know this. When they come into your home and they only see 1.5 bathrooms, they know it's a pressure point. Not necessarily saying they're trying to take advantage of you, but they know that, time is a big pain point for you. And so a lot of companies do charge a premium just because of the anxiety of the whole situation. So, you see a lot of those companies that will come in a day and redo your bathroom. Well, they're just basically putting crap over top of your existing stuff, putting a plastic tub thing over your tub. And it's just not, to me, it's not worth the expense. I've heard some really insane quotes on these, maybe I shouldn't say the name, but like these fitting bath products that you put over top of existing tubs, and they've cracked and have problems, but they're almost costing just as much as our standard, bathroom contractor to come in there and do tile and everything. So, they could be $10,000, $12,000, $13,000, but the big thing that they're selling is that you can do it all in a day and have your bathroom back together. So, this pain point of if you only had one bathroom is a pain point, and I completely understand that, but I think my course will be able to help you outline that, or if you just watch these videos, you'll be able to get a good concept of what you're walking into. So in this quote, I'll get into this further, probably on a live stream on its own at some point. But basically, I always really spell out what I plan to do for that client. So, I'm demoing everything down to the studs. I highlight what kind of tub I'm installing, that I'm waterproofing it, what kind of shower faucet I'm installing. I go over the electrical, making sure that they understand that I'm putting a new vent fan in. A lot of times I'll even put in here, and I didn't in this one for some reason, I always put in there might be an additional cost if there's no duct work exiting from the vent fan. You don't want to have your vent fan just venting into your attic. It's just too much humid air, and there's a lot of homes out there that don't have anything at all. So a lot of times I don't do the investigation work of finding that. I mean, when you're running around doing estimates, it's like you feel like you're just basically wasting your time most of the time, and you do a lot of times. So you don't really want to spend 2 hours investigating everything about the product. So a lot of times I just put in just like an allowance to put a new vent on there. Anyways, get into drywall and painting. Obviously you're going to be putting all new drywall in. And again, if you're somebody's considering doing their own bathroom, I really recommend you pulling all those walls down so that you can put new drywall. Is not that difficult to do. It could be time consuming. You might not get it done in a timely manner, but you can't. I mean, you can screw it up to a certain extent, but it's not. It's something that anything that you do with drywall can end up being fixed in a lot of ways. You can always keep mudding over it until you get it smooth, until you make it look right. So, I don't think you should be overly concerned about taking out the walls. And then I kind of give a little image of what the tub surround might look like, just so I can reference what my actual project is going to be, so that when the client doesn't go to the towel store and come home with glass mosaics and a herringbone style that they want me to do. You kind of have to be clear about what kind of pattern you're going to be working with and what kind of towel. You don't want to be showing up at the job and they have all this Carrara marble and expect you to do it the same price that you were doing subway tile. So keep that in mind if you are a contractor. You definitely want to be charging more for stone and stuff like that, because it takes a lot more time to cut and make look right. I go over what kind of floor I'm putting in. A lot of these days, most people just want like larger floor tile. Makes it easier because there's less grout joints. It looks good. So 12 by 24s is a pretty typical size tile. And I kind of highlight the vanity. But this is probably what most people are interested in. This is Pittsburgh though. So, you have to reference your own living standards or your own areas and cost of living and what things are cost. But typically a standard 5x8 bathroom will be between $12,000 and $15,000. And that's not going totally crazy. You're not getting any heated towel racks. You're not getting a heated floor for that. You're just getting, a lot of the basic, a decent tub and a decent vanity, but you're not going overly crazy high end. I would just say this is a fairly standard price. So you can save quite a bit of money doing this yourself. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of tools that you might have to purchase, but I think you can really overcome that and still be way ahead of the game if you do this yourself. So, but yeah, thanks, Brian. Brian's Dumb Channel. That's a good name, man. It's kind of funny. So, $7,000 for bath fitters. Did my aunt's shower, and all they did was a shower. Wow, $7,000 just for the shower. Okay, so that gets that really gets it gets up there. So I could see how it would be $10,000 to $15,000 if they were replacing the toilet or whatever. So yeah, that's a lot of money for that. I think the towel definitely is going to be a lot nicer looking. So let's get into this course here. And so this, I'm not trying to, be a big salesman on this, but if you go to bathroomremodelingteachable.com, this is really just a way to help support my channel. And I have it at a very discounted price right now because I'm not finished with the course. I'm basically, as I'm building this out, I'm doing these live streams. And again, one of my hopes is I get some feedback. If I get more questions about things, I will implement them into the course, highlighting, I don't know, whatever it might be. There's a lot of things that I'm putting in here that you're probably not going to use in your own bathroom, but I can add different components to it that will explain things. So, it's really helpful to get input from you guys because, I'm doing this in a lot of ways. This is kind of a, somewhat of a selfish endeavor because the more organized I can get, the faster I can get at it and doing all of this stuff. And so my hope is, basically I'm on day 6. I still got one more day to basically edit and get all the videos together. But what I'm planning to do after that is putting a real master checklist together, because it's really about being organized before you start this project. I always tell everybody, if you're going to run the Home Depot every day, you're not going to get this done in a timely fashion. That ends up making your head spin a little bit, and it really togs up a lot of time. So I'm not saying that it's almost impossible to do a job and not have to run to the hardware store for some kind of plumbing fitting or electrical fitting, but you can get a lot of this stuff ahead of time, and it's going to make it's just going to allow you to be more focused and get things together. So, but Alex, Architectural Sheet Metal, hey, another great channel. You guys, if you guys are doing any type of metal roofing, any type of metal related stuff, his channel is fantastic. So, between excellent labor up there with all of his content, and Alex, yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you coming, stopping in here always. But right now, I'm just selling it for $25. It's not very much money, but I really want people to use this, and it's really going to help me get some feedback. That price will go up once I'm actually done. But I don't really want to ever really make it too insanely pricey, because I just think this is a value to a lot of people. And what I'll eventually do is probably have some coaching and stuff. If you really need help, me looking at your particular bathroom, we can do FaceTime calls or something like that. But I don't have any of that set up yet, so once I do, I'll let you know. But what I do have also is a custom glass enclosure course. Now I know this is a very specific type of project, but it is a big pain point for a lot of homeowners that are doing custom showers. Once you get to the glass, you're just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it's going to cost me $3,000, $4,000 to have glass installed. That's kind of why I made this, because I always install my own glass, and I feel like if you're a good tile contractor, you should be able to do your own glass too, and you can make a considerable amount of money doing that on top of your stuff. So I have this course available now. It's already complete. It goes through how to measure, order it. Ordering is a big deal. If you haven't ordered before from these glass companies, they always make you feel like you can't do it, or they're not going to be liable for it, or they just kind of try to talk you out of it. So I make sure that you have some templates that you can fill out, your measurements, and then if you become more organized there and be confident with what you're asking them to do, you shouldn't have a problem getting a good price on glass. You can understand there's glass companies though, where if a homeowner comes in there with something, they don't want their name being tarnished in any way, and they don't want an argument about, because you mismeasured the glass. So makes a lot of sense, but my course, I think, will really help you out on determining how to go about measuring it, and should definitely save you a lot of money. Even if you screwed up on one of your shower panels, you could probably get it replaced and still be well under what a glass company would install it for. So getting into the course here, basically, it's all encompassing, or it will be once I'm complete, but tub and shower. So everything from installing the tub to installing the shower faucet, the waterproofing system. I do only have one, all these are basically, I only have one off of what I did on this particular bathroom. But, like the tub and shower faucet, a lot of those are all kind of the same installation. But as I continue to get more content, I will be adding it to here. So in case you went with a Moen valve, or you went with Kohler, or I actually have a Hansgrohe shower faucet I'll be putting together. So, but there's I'll be adding some of those things here to, just give you different references of what different types of valves to install. But then the waterproofing, hanging and finishing drywall, again, like I do everything myself. So this is just all me doing everything. So all the techniques and all the different ways about going things is just basically how I've been doing them for years. There's obviously you can always improve. I'm always improving. The more I put myself out here, the more criticism I get, the more, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You should do it this way. And I take a lot of that in, and I take what's valuable, and I'm going to implement all that stuff. This is one of the tremendous things about this internet, social media, what do you want to call it, matrix of whatever it is. It's just we're all learning at such a quick speed. I just really wish I would have had this when I was 20 years old starting out. I wouldn't have had to learn everything the hard way, So But this is basically what the course looks like. It's broken down by the day. So, I basically go through goals of the day and making sure that you stay focused on what you need to get done each day. Now, again, you might not be able to do this all in that amount of time, but this is still the order in which way you would want to go about doing it, or what I feel that you would want to go about doing it. So, I think it's a really nice layout, really helps you keeps you organized. And then there's always a ton of different links in here, and just kind of going over the highlights of the video, so you don't have to watch a 10-minute video over again. You can just kind of go through the highlights that I have summarized, and then you can always leave me a comment at the end if you need to have any questions. Not much different than YouTube. You can always ask me a question below there, and I'll try to get to you. But I have a feeling once this channel gets to a certain point, it's just impossible to get to anybody. But this is really where my efforts are going to lie, is within doing this. So you also have the ability to have this scroll down here on the left-hand side here, which this is made on teachable.com, by the way. I just love the site. I think it's great because then they have all these little indicators on here of what you missed or haven't finished. So if you just, my thoughts are, and my hope is that you buy this course, you're involved with this way ahead of time before you actually get started on your project. You're not actually trying to find answers to something when you already have everything torn apart. But this would be a great way. You can just kind of watch all the videos, and then, the things you haven't completed, you can go back to, and will keep you organized. And you're not watching any ads. That's the big difference between what this course has to offer and YouTube. I think eventually, learning off of YouTube is great, and you can learn a lot of things, but it's very, very distracting. And you're always getting bombarded by something. So you follow a lot of people, they're posting out things, and before you know it, you just spent 2 hours on YouTube and you didn't even get into the stuff that you actually wanted to get into. So get in here to day 6. So we'll get into this intro on this. Makes you feel, modern. Yeah, you were saying, yep, absolutely. The glass companies definitely make you feel like you can't do it yourself. I agree with that. And that's one of the main reasons. And I've gotten those arguments before when I go to even when I tell them I'm a contractor, they give me a hard time sometimes. So being organized and being confident about your measurements is really important. Being clear on your paperwork too. So if you can type it in, like the templates that I have, you can type in the measurement of your glass, it's going to make it that much easier for everybody. So let's just get into the intro here real quick. Okay, so day 6. This day is going to be primarily a lot of cleaning, painting, and grouting your tub surround. So we're going to be getting things ready to pretty much get into the finish line here. And everything is about timing when it comes to grouting. So I'm going to give you a lot of great tips with that, and so that you can have an easy time with that. So we'll get started today, and then hopefully tomorrow we can just wrap things up. So I always, you'll find in most of my videos, even on my YouTube channel here, besides the live streams where I end up talking a lot and, whatnot, most of the time I'm just getting straight to the point. I'm not going to belabor a lot of simple points. I'm not going to try to, I'm just not an entertainer, put it that way. I'm down the business. I'm just basically, this is the way you want to get it done. So most of my videos are to the point, and I feel like highlight the things that are important. But again, that's where some of the input of anybody who's in the course, or even if you're watching this on YouTube, it will help me make sure that I get some videos or different things that are unclear. Now, bathroom remodeling is tough. I mean, there's definitely, nothing's ever the same. Almost every bathroom I do is different. The only thing that really has changed since I've really been doing bathrooms is the newer homes, the 1990s and up. They've been pretty consistent with how things are laid out. So they obviously have all plastic piping at this point, ABS or PVC. But, we've come a long way with our engineering and our ability to put plans together and make sense. So I feel like everyone's kind of gotten on the same page on, hey, this is the way we should plumb things. This is the way that we're going to bring things out. So you can kind of predict a little bit of what you might be getting into. The older homes, not so much. It was kind of up to whatever small company was coming in there to do the plumbing, to do it. Not that they didn't necessarily follow. Well, a lot of them didn't follow rules. From what I can tell, a lot of them didn't even pay attention to anything. They just did whatever they felt like doing. So it's really tough to basically show every scenario when it comes to, you know, your plumbing arrangement or even how your structure is built. I mean, these are all things that are important to kind of try to get some kind of reference, but a lot of times you can't even tell until you pull the bathroom apart to even see what was really done. So there's always a real big question area of how that's done. So, but this home that I was working on was 1970s. So there, a lot of the materials and everything that was in this was, you know, newer drywall, no plaster. There wasn't any mud bed walls, you know, so there wasn't quite the difficulty of the stuff in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, but it definitely had, you know, some electrical different things. Somebody had done some other stuff over the years that wasn't correct. But, you know, so on these goals of the day, I just go over the quick reference point so you can kind of just stay focused on what you're doing. So number one, let's touch up that drywall. We want to paint today. So you want to touch up those areas that you didn't get to, or you might have some scuff marks. I always like to use this 5-minute mud. I have a link right here just to show you what it is. But this 5-minute mud, you know, if you haven't really played around with this, you might want to get the 20-minute mud. This is 5-minute mud. It'll dry up exactly what it says, but this allows you to hit those scuff marks and go over things real quickly, and then you can sand them down again and get things primed. So I always have a bag of this so that I can quickly get things finished, and that's the first thing I do on day 6. Is I don't even take the clips off the floor of the leveling clips that I did on the floor. I just immediately do this because I want to get those walls nice and ready for priming. So, there we go. Goals of the day. Okay. And then, moving right on to the cleaning, getting those clips off of the floor. You know, a lot of times day 6 for me is after the weekend. So I go Monday through Friday, take off the weekend, and I'm coming back there Monday. So sometimes your floor tile, and I'm trying to improve on my messiness. I'm definitely getting a lot of comments from a lot of great, you know, even towel contractors say, hey man, you need to like clean up your act. And I agree. But, you know, I did this in 7 days and filming, and 2021 was certainly a stressful year. So, you know, I do plan on getting cleaner and better, but you might be able to relate to the towel work if you haven't done much of it, because it can be a messy job. It is a messy job. And so, you know, I'm going to show you some tips on getting thin, really hard and thin set. Like typically you don't want to be removing these clips, you know, 3 days later. You want to be removing them the next morning. That'll make it easier to scrape out all those joints. And then we're going to do the grouting. This is a big part of it. We're going to be doing an epoxy grout. I'm going to go over a bunch today. Well, that's what our main focus point today is getting into this epoxy grout. I really feel this is kind of starting to become my go-to for everything, is this epoxy Latacrete Spectralock. You know, there's a lot of great grouts out there, and there's a lot of crappy grouts out there. And this is really close to starting to be one of my favorite ones. And I think maybe it's just because of the amount of times that I've used it, but I want to express to you like that you shouldn't be afraid of this. It is expensive to use, and there are some reasons that you might run into problems with it if you've never used it before, but I'm going to address a lot of those issues because I really do. I think this is the most bulletproof grout out there. And if you're doing white grout in a tub surround or anything like that, I think epoxy is the way to go. You can kind of like get away with things with, you know, a dark gray grout or, you know, other off colors, but white always is sensitive. And I always want to get that back to what it was when I first started. I always like to check up on my jobs and see what they look like even 3 or 4 years later. And that's where I've changed some of my methods. I've gone back to some homes that I've seen, and I noticed that the grout I can't get clean, and that they were having problems like that orange moldy crap that gets on it, and they can't get it out of those grout joints. This stuff is very smooth. So I'll probably be going over a lot of that here this evening about the epoxy grout. And then you want to prime paint your walls, your ceiling, get your shower valve trim on, paint that bathroom. So these are all things like, this is like the step of the order of going about things. But while you're waiting for, you know, some of this grout to set up, you could be priming the walls and moving forward. So again, this is just like a lot of timing issues you want to try to get through so that you can complete the bathroom the following day. And then grouting a floor at the end of the day, I really recommend not trying to do anything over a freshly grouted floor. Let it sit overnight and then come the next morning, cover it over with a drop cloth and do the rest of your work. Because there's so many times I've been in a rush trying to grout the floor and then try to install the toilet right away. And it always kind of bites you because you end up getting something in that grout joint or you mess it up. But this is where, I'm not getting into this today. I'll probably get into this Wednesday or Thursday for the part 2. But this is where I kind of like to use a different type of grout that, has some flexibility. I can go back and touch things up if I need to. And I think the floor is one of those areas that there might always be some touching up to be. Then I just have a whole bunch of links and stuff that are helpful to the project. Just kind of highlighting the products that I used within the course. So let me see if I got any comments here. Josh, what's your opinion between Schluter set and all set? Schluter set is just the unmodified. His contractor got arrested. Well, that's terrible. Just trying to use. Schluter set is great. It's just an unmodified thin set. It's going to be easier to clean out whatever you get on it. I use I use the Schluter set, the unmodified, on sensitive tiles. So like tiles that have like a really rough pattern to them. There's a lot of these 12 by 24s that have kind of like a basket weave, like gritty feeling to them, and it's made to be slip resistant, but they're really kind of porous and they're difficult to get grout off of, or thin set for that matter. So when I see tile work or pieces of tile that have like a real rough surface to them, sometimes I'll go with the unmodified Schluter set or whatever other type of unmodified thin set, because I know that it doesn't have the latex additive in it and you're going to be able to scrub it off the tile easier. But for the most part, when I am installing tile, I like to use modified thin set. I like to use the Schluter all set, especially for adhering their membranes. But I do a lot of the all set. But yeah, no, there's no problem with that. You definitely, I think you'll like it. I don't think you'll have an issue with it. It just doesn't have a really great non-sag quality to it. So if you're doing like intricate tile work, if you're doing it, a mosaic border, if you're doing stuff that requires things to have a little bit more of a, like what I'm thinking of is like a waterfall feature. Say if you're doing like a mosaic tile going from floor to ceiling and like as a border, that has a lot of weight to it. So having a cheap thin set, I probably wouldn't use Schluter set for that necessarily, because, it doesn't have a not real great non-sag quality to it. I probably, you'll hear me saying this a million times, but one of my favorite thin sets is the Ardex X5, Ardex X77. It's some of the stickiest, long-lasting thin set, but it's really great for doing mosaics and other things that you're trying to like keep that tile in place and not having to move things. So, have I had any problems with different colors on the batches of epoxy? No, I have not. Typically, there's not too many bathrooms that I'm doing more than one batch on, though, because that'd be a really big bathroom. A lot of tile work, I would imagine, to, because those 9-pound units, I've never really run out of the grout. I always have almost a quarter to a half a bucket left of it. So if you're doing that much grouting, no, I have not seen that issue. I've not seen that issue. But I don't think, Laticrete's pretty good. I think they would be astonished to hear that you would have a problem if they did. Yeah, not with epoxy. I've definitely had a problem with traditional grouts where, those definitely didn't match up very well. And I'll get more into the grouting once we get into it here. But I don't really see the point of using a grout that needs to be sealed these days at all. It doesn't make sense to me, especially with all these new, highly, they're just highly engineered these days. So I mean, they're definitely superior than the old traditional grouts. So, premix? No. I mean, the epoxy is not premixed. It's going to be a 3-part system. So yeah, we'll get into that epoxy here shortly. But going into the final coat, like I said, I get right to the point. It's only less than a minute. I'm going to go over this real quick. Okay, so final touch-ups for the day of painting. You want to just use some 5-minute mud. This will speed up the process to get it to dry. And you can really just wet sand this if you wanted to with a sponge. So this is a great way to be able to just get those extra imperfections and basically be able to move right on to the painting process. So I always have a bag of this for small projects and just touch-ups. But you definitely want to be sanding that third coat prior to doing any of this. Obviously, that is really important to get a nice smooth surface. And then you're just going to be basically remudding over the areas. So I don't have the footage of actually using that 5-minute mud. Something went wrong with my camera, but at least you get the concept. Just go over anything that there might be wrong, and then you can start painting. So it's just really about touch-ups. A lot of times that Schluter edge there, maybe you didn't get that drywall or that all that tile work done in the fourth and fifth day. So this is where I'm like in a time crunch. I don't want to have to come back another day just for painting. I mean, that painting process for this bathroom is not very time consuming, but to have to address that seam, I mean, it could take you hours. Like, you can really waste a lot of extra time. So that's where that 5-minute mud is definitely nice to go over stuff like that might be overhanging or whatnot. But you can, remember, you can always wet sand. So wet sanding is just using that sponge and just, you really want to obviously wipe down your walls and everything before you get into priming and painting. But yeah, using a scrubby pad or even just the regular sponge, you can smooth out a lot of that stuff. So that's kind of what I do on my final sanding after I use that 5-minute mud. And then I just always just go through the highlights real quickly of what you wanted to do on this rather than you watching the video over again. Again, wet sanding is one way to go. So I have a bunch of links here below that will have some things that are helpful, but this is pretty straightforward. So this is just a small little tutorial on that finish coat. And then we're going to get into cleaning the tile and preparing for the grout. So this is important. This would be basically right after I get that drywall mudded here. I just move on to the floor to get that way. And you'll see why I think this is important to do on the next step, especially if you took the weekend off and you're coming there that Monday to address this. There was a lot of thin set that was, I was pretty messy. It was a Friday. I wanted to get out of there. So, I definitely could have been cleaner on my installation, but, trying to remove some of that hard thin set after 3 days of sitting there, it can be very difficult. So I'm going to give you a tip on how to soften that up. Okay, so your clips, you just want to hit them parallel with the grout joints. Just hit them with a rubber mallet. Now, I did take a weekend off, so typically I really like to get these things taken out the day after because it makes it a little bit easier, especially with the thin set. But we're going to show you something here that will make it a little bit easier to get rid of that grout or get rid of that extra thin set. So now some of these clips are going to break when you have too much thin set around them. But
if you take your time, you won't have that issue.
Cleanly.
Yeah, basically, if you leave too much thin set in between
really
the tiles,
helpful is using some sulfamic acid.
Yeah, so this is basically the big tip here. But what I was going to say is that if you take your time when you're setting the tile and you don't get too much thin set in between the clip and the tile, those clips will come right out. I see a lot of guys using toothbrushes, different types of way of making sure that that's clean. It's just a matter of just taking more time to do it. And that's where, I'm always in a rush. I'm always doing too many things at once. And, so you get punished for it. This is my punishment is having a harder time cleaning things. Now, if you see any of those clips that are stuck in between there, all you really have to do is take a utility knife and cut it down below the tile layer. I usually just recommend getting it down to about like an 1/8 inch below it. Just as long as it's obviously not sticking up and that the grout isn't going to enter, the grout's not going to be hurt by it. So, but you just have to be careful your waterproofing, and especially if you have a heated floor underneath of it, you don't want to be digging into your waterproofing. But a lot, typically on a floor like this, you might have 2 or 3 clips that are stuck in there that you're going to have to cut out. And you just take the utility knife, score it on the side of the edge of the tile, and just make sure it's below the tile layer. What's really helpful is using some sulfuric acid with water to soften up that thin set. Okay, so I got a little spray bottle here. I don't know, I think that's like a quart. But just put a couple tablespoons of this in there. Oh. Okay, so about 5-10 minutes later, after letting that set, the sulfuric acid, it'll be much easier to clean out your joints. And if you have any of these little clips that are sticking out that broke off, you can just take a utility knife and just score it against the tile, just making sure it's below the tile layer. And I would say about 1/8 inch is usually good. You don't have to get it all the way out of the joint. You just have to get it so it doesn't protrude through the grout, obviously. And then you want to be careful of your waterproofing when you do cut it. But using that sulfuric acid really softens this up and makes it a lot easier to remove this thin set. And I should mention, I'm using a little linoleum knife. That's what I use for a scraper. It makes it pretty easy to get in these joints and scrape them out. Okay, so this is kind of the punishment of leaving too much thin set in between those clips. If you take more time and actually make sure that there isn't thin set around the clips, this will be a lot faster process. So being neater will pay off. But really, it's not that big of a deal. Just using some of that sulfuric acid really softens up. And I like to use a shop vac afterwards, make sure I clean out all those joints. One important thing, though, with this sulfuric acid, you really want to scrub everything down really well with water, because you don't want any of that left in the joints when you're grouting. You don't want to get, you don't want to basically ruin the grout with that sulfuric acid. So make sure you clean everything up. Same goes with the tub surround. Use a white scrubby pad, scrub everything down. Make sure you get all those clips and everything out of it, and you should be good and ready to move on to the next portion, which is getting into the grouting. So that would be the only important thing about using that sulfuric acid. You have to be careful. And, I'm obviously was talking in that video. You definitely want to be wearing a respirator. You don't want to be inhaling that stuff. It is acid. But you also don't want to be saturating everything so much that you're getting it way down. And because it's actually softening up the thin set. So you could cause a problem with your tile setting if you just kind of dump the whole buck of it all over the entire thing. I was just using a spray bottle, so it's just to get the surface of that stuff removed. But then you want to make sure that you really scrub it down with water so that that acid is not present for when you're grouting it. And that's the reason I like to do that, the second thing. So I do the walls first, and then I go into scrubbing a floor if I have to use that. If I have to use the sulfuric acid, I want to get that done right away because I want it to dry before I get into grouting. I don't want that water that I just scrubbed everything down with to be in the grout joints. You really can't do that anyways. It has to be somewhat dry, or you're just going to have problems with your grouting. Having water in your grout joints will just ruin the grout joint. It'll end up dissolving your grout, especially the premix that I'm going to be using on this. But yeah, you just don't want that sulfuric acid to be sitting on the surface or in the tile joint. So I like to have everything dry before I actually get into the grouting. And other thing I should say about sulfuric acid is that you have to be careful on natural stones, marbles, any type of sensitive stone. I would test an area before you do it. It could etch it. It could, like if you had like a highly polished marble or something like that, it could etch it and make it dull looking. It could make it look like a honed finish versus having it a nice gloss. So be careful about that. And, if you're doing those more intricate types of tiles, just go there the next day. Go there Saturday morning, clean up your clips, clean up your floor with regular water. Don't be waiting 3 days. This is just primarily for, and I wouldn't use sulfuric acid the next day at all. I would never do it the next day after setting tile. This is mainly for not emergency situations, but basically like, hey, I took a whole weekend off. Now I have this really hard stuff that I can't get out of the joints. That's really the only time I use that stuff. So be careful with it. But it is, if you're a tile contractor, have some of that on hand. Definitely nice. But then below, this is just basically highlighting the main points again. Again, I don't necessarily think you have to keep watching the videos over again. So I just kind of highlight the main points, and then having some, basically links in here. So I got the link to the sulfuric acid. This is different. This is not Mapei. This is something else. I think this is a custom product. Yeah, custom building products. Not very expensive, but yeah, pay attention to and be careful with it, because it's not, it is acid. So where did my screen go? Oh, there we go. And then Linoleum Knife. This is kind of like my favorite non-tile tool out there. I always have a bunch of these on hand because it really makes it easy to scrape those grout joints. It's like one of my tools that I love to maneuver my tile with. It's just really easy to work with. I used to use 5-in-1s like to scrape out grout joints, but those things could be easy for going sideways on, and then you're chipping your tile. You always have to be careful with the way that you scrape out those grout joints. You don't want to be kind of tweaking it and then chipping the edge of the tile. That's really painful to have happen after you just spent all that time putting it down. And I got some links for the scrubby pads. You should always have a dozen of those for any bathroom remodel project, because it's definitely helpful for scrubbing tile and whatnot. So Miranda, sorry, I'm going to butcher that name, but yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate you being here. All right, so we're going to get in our main topic tonight. That's basically, this is the main topic for this evening. So probably not going to go on for an hour and a half unless I get a lot of questions. But yeah, let's get right into the epoxy grouting. And like I said, this is really over the 14 years I've been specializing in bathrooms. Now, I've been doing contracting for 22 years, and I've done a lot of bathrooms previous to that. But I would have to say, once I started, 2008 is when I really started doing nothing but bathrooms. And I was definitely doing most things incorrectly in the beginning days, because even in 2008, you didn't really have, YouTube was out there. Maybe that was 2007, 2005, maybe YouTube came out. But you didn't have you didn't have these resources to be able to learn like this. I was relying a lot on the Home Depot guys. I was relying HGTV shows, stuff like that. So I had no idea at the beginning that Hardy Backer and cement board, they're not waterproof, that, you need to waterproof those if you want them to last long in showers. I didn't know, I was using the rubber liner system for shower pans, and not that you can't do that correctly, but there's, these days I don't even see the point of it, because you can buy a Schluter pan for $100 and have it already pre-sloped, and it takes all the work on it. Now, there is a lot of reasons to use mud, and I still do use mud on certain circumstances. A lot of it's usually like in a basement bathroom where, it's just going to be, if they wanted a curbless shower or something, if it's an unusual sized shower, or if I want to extend a shower out further, I might use mud. But I think the days of using a rubber liner and mud bed, I don't really see the point anymore. And even if I did a mud bed, I'm always doing a topical membrane. I'm doing the Schluter membrane over top. You're not basically allowing that mud bed to fill up with water. There's no point to doing that anymore. Have the waterproofing directly below the tile so it can escape. Use a Schluter drain, use a Latacrete drain, whatever you want to use, but just don't, why keep going back to the old terrible methods? There's so many mud beds with rubber liners that I'm pulling out because they were just done incorrectly. So, but yeah, so the epoxy is really becoming, now I have this broken down into a bunch of different videos because I think it's important to, oh, okay, there it is. Okay, I was going to say, I haven't seen it in this format because I'm doing it on the back end of it. I just wanted to make sure my videos are there. But I have this broken down into mixing setting, and then cleaning, because there's a lot involved with each one. And the mixing is really important, so pay attention. Every little teaspoon counts. Okay, so we're going to grout the tub surround, and we're going to be using a white grout. Now, when it comes to white, I'm always really sensitive about it because most of the bathrooms I tear out that have white grout, it's either yellow or it's stained, and molding. Molding's a different issue, but white is really the toughest grout to keep nice looking. And so when I do white grout, I really recommend using Epoxy Grout. This is Spectralock. This is the original formula. It comes with a 2-part system. So you have A and B that you mix together. But really, this is going to be, commercial kitchens use this. This is like the stuff that people go to use to keep their grout clean and being able to get back to that whiteness. So I really recommend using a high quality epoxy for white grout. If you're using gray or something like that, you can go with something a little bit simpler to use, but really epoxy is pretty easy to use. It's just you have to follow these steps I'm going to show you on how to go about applying it and installing it. So we'll go ahead and mix this. This is a larger bucket too. This will do the entire tub surround, but they always have a indication on the back with grout joint sizes and the size of tile and then how much grout you need. But they do make smaller portions of this. If you're a little timid about trying this, you can start with smaller batches and see how it goes, like do one wall and then work on the next. But you'll see that it's actually pretty easy when it comes to it. Now it's pretty humid in this environment right now, so it's going to take a little bit longer for it to set up so that I can remove the epoxy, but even in dry conditions, you do have plenty of working time with this. So the first thing you want to do is just get your A and B mixture packets into the bucket, and you're going to want to mix them together first. So let's just cut this open and definitely get every little bit out of these bags. It's like almost like every teaspoon makes a difference. So just really squeeze this all out. It'll make sure that you have the best consistency of grout. And the way I know that is so just really by doing it the wrong way, not squeezing that out. So it really does. It makes a big difference. Because you'll find that setting the grout is the hardest part of the epoxy. So squeeze all this stuff out. Every little drop really does make a difference. It just really makes a difference with the consistency of grout. If you leave a whole bunch of this stuff in there, your grout's going to be a lot thicker and it's going to be harder to spread. So really try to get every little bit out of here. It's kind of amazing how like 1 teaspoon can make a difference. Okay. And you definitely want to be wearing rubber gloves with this stuff. Okay, so then mix these 2 parts together. You buy the kits that already have the buckets with them, it's kind of nice. Okay, so then go ahead and mix your powder together. So really just mix that for a couple minutes. So when it comes to grout floats, there's 2 that I really like using. One's made by Marshalltown. This is a 4 by 12, and this is a what is this, like a 10-inch by 4-inch, and this is Trox. So this one I primarily use for urethanes, regular traditional grouts. It has a little bit more flexibility on the corners and stuff. And it's not quite as stiff. You can definitely use this for the epoxy, but really the correct one would be this Trox. This is an Epoxy Grout Float, and it's just a little bit stiffer. So it allows you, the one thing about Epoxy Grout is that it's stiffer and it's harder. The most work you're going to be doing is actually just filling the joints. After that, it's pretty easy. But it really just comes down to packing it, and having a little bit of a stiffer trowel or a float really makes a difference. So yeah, it is like the biggest amount of work of this whole process is just packing those joints. So you'll You'll feel it in that tennis elbow if you're a little bit older. But yeah, get one of those decent grout floats. Don't be getting those crappy ones at Home Depot. I would order one of these for sure. Makes it a lot faster and easier to install. But then, yeah, remember, you can get these smaller kits. So, probably on a shower like this, probably 2 of these would do it. So you still be at the $90. And I tell you, I should let you guys know this. This is a site that I always use, this floorlife.com. Those guys have been really awesome. Every time I order something from them, it's really quickly, I've really quickly gotten it. And I don't know, they were a nice company to work with, but they always have decent pricing on their stuff. So that's where I normally order my epoxy grout. But then, like that 9-pounder, would probably do something that's twice that space. So that is the one thing about epoxy, is that once you mix that, that's it. There is no going back. If you find something tomorrow that you're like, oh man, I just need a little bit more of grout, you're kind of screwed. That is the biggest painful part of using epoxy, is that there's no going back after that stuff sets up. I'm going to give you some advice on what you do with the remainder so that you have the ability to touch things up, after you pack everything. But once, the next day, that's it. You almost have to buy one of these stupid mini kits. It's a really expensive touch up at that point. So I'd say that's the biggest pain point of this epoxy. I feel that the packing, the cleaning, the whole process of it, it's not that bad. That's the only problem, is that if you miss something, you're kind of screwed and you have to buy more of it. And you don't want to be trying to hold back material in any way. I don't know if you can really do that effectively by trying to hold back part A and part B. You could probably try it, but I wouldn't think that Laddercrete would recommend that. And I don't believe they have any small touch-up kits. You would have to buy, a 2.5 pound or 2.25 pounder to do that. So, but again, just highlighting the main points of this, making sure that you get every bit of that out of there makes a huge difference. Mix it up for about 2 minutes or so, and you'll be ready to go. So I just got some links for some decent rubber gloves. I like those. I like these gloves right here. These guys here. Oh wait, no, that's not even it. Huh. See, stupid Amazon. They always mess me up. But I like the Viper gloves. I guess you could get them at Lowe's. I'll have to change that. But anyways, get some rubber gloves. You don't want to be handling this stuff, I don't think. I don't know what the epoxy does to your skin, but I don't, it's probably not that great to be handling it. So let me see if I got any questions before I move on here. Hey, Steve, would you have any issues with using Ardex 5 over rolled waterproofing membrane? No, not at all. Ardex usually always, or I've talked to a lot of their reps, because there's always this debate of unmodified, modified because of Schluter. No one else cares. Weedy doesn't care. I don't think Laddercrete really cares. Like, no one really cares about this unmodified, modified thing except for Schluter. So it's a little bit annoying. And I understand their hypothesis behind it of, the having a waterproof material and then having like a porcelain tile kind of being almost non-absorbent. So then, the thin set might not fully dry. But Ardex does warrant their thin sets over Schluter membranes. And then, if you're using other ones, I don't think they care at all either. Red Guard, Aqua Defense, no, that's not going to matter at all. So I primarily do Ardex products for setting my tile. But, when it comes to actually setting membranes and stuff, I do like to use the Schluter products for that, because I have found that they have kind of a superior bonding, it seems to me, to their Dietra mat and to their all their other membranes. They definitely have that done pretty well. So, yeah, Troy, how much each covers? Yeah, they have the specs on the bag of how much that specs has. I have to look that up. But this 9-pounder, I mean, these were all 6x6s. I only had probably 80 square feet around this entire bathtub. Pretty sure I have to read the specs. There's always specs on them, but you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, because especially, Troy, you're doing this real big mosaic floor. Those little tiny herringbone things, that's a really tough thing to gauge on how much you would need fill that in. I mean, that's a tough one to call on that. I'm not sure if they're going to spec some of these tiles. They're not going to really spec. And the other thing you have with yours, you're using those. It's like stone, so it's thick. So that's a lot of grout to fill in between all of those. So yeah. So going on to setting the grout. Like I said, this is the biggest point. This is the biggest job, I think, of the entire process, is just packing those joints, because it does. And that's where maybe getting those smaller batches are worthwhile, because this can be, somewhat exhausting filling all these in. I know I'm always sweating to do this. A project like this, I think, took me about 25 minutes to fill everything in. But you have a lot of time with this stuff. I would say, in this humid environment, it was humid, like I said, but I had a good solid 20 minutes after this to even work on it. So with the 25 minutes it took me to fill all of this, I still had another 20 minutes to wait before I even cleaned it. So you have a good period of time with it. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about your timing process. Just, don't take lunch once you mix it. You gotta get to work and get it in there. So the first step is get a clean bucket of water and just wipe down your surface of your tile. You don't want the water dripping off the tile or anything. You just want it to dampen the surface. This kind of helps glide the and that's a dumb point, right? I mean, not a dumb point, but that is, getting a good sponge makes a world of difference. You get those cheap crap ones you get from big box stores. They're not as good. I primarily just use these Arctic sponges. They are expensive, and I have the links in here in the description if you can't find a local place to buy them. They are hard to find. You can order them off of Amazon. They are $13 a piece. I mean, that's not cheap for a sponge, but it really makes it a lot easier for you. It's just like the way the pores of the, and being a square sponge allows you to tool that joint nice and smoothly with the tile. But I think it really comes down to the way they manufacture them. They're just kind of, the way they absorb. But on epoxy, your sponge is going to be ruined by the end of it. I'd probably, if I were to, typically on any given bathroom job, I usually have a half a dozen Arctic sponges that I pretty much go through. And you're going to ruin probably 2 of them on this job, because you're not going to be able to get the haze or the epoxy out of those sponges. So they're pretty much ruined after this process. But you're definitely, for a tub surround, you definitely need at least 2 of them. You definitely need that at a bare minimum. So, but like I said, each bathroom wire, I usually typically get a half a dozen of them. In the surface, this kind of helps glide the grout onto your joints. But like I said, you don't want to be washing out the joints. You don't want to see water running down your joints or anything. But really, it's important to clean all of the tile before you really get started on this process, because you don't really want to be picking out thin set and everything else when you're doing this, especially with epoxy, because you only have so much time with it. Typically, you have about 25 minutes after installing it before you have to remove it. So you don't want to be messing around with too much thin set. Definitely clean out all the glass and all the tile before you get started. So then it's just a matter of applying this and packing the joints. So you're just really paying attention of pressing it in to the joints, and I always just pack a arm's length. I don't scrape it off until I get everything packed. And don't worry about too much of the grout being left over on the tile. You'll find that it's really easy to remove once we get to that portion. So yeah, I mean, this is really not any rocket science stuff here, but free, because you're gonna be caulking that joint after the grout sets up. Yeah, so keep that corner ceiling, that ceiling joint clear. Take your trowel on a 45-degree angle and just try to scrape it off of the tile. Like I said, it's not a big deal if there's anything left. You just want to try to get majority of it off so you're not having to scrub too much. But with epoxy, it's really kind of nice because when you get to the cleaning level, you don't have to worry about how much water you're using to actually remove the grout. That's one unique thing about this traditional epoxy grout, is that the water really won't wash out the joints if you give it enough time to set up. Whereas almost every other type of grout, you know, if you have too much, if you wash it off with too much water, you're going to wash out the joint. Just pay attention to your joints, make sure they're full. That's a bigger concern than getting the grout off of the tile. And you'll feel when it's kind of hard to spread. That's where just take a rag, just wipe the area down again, and then that makes it easier to glide that grout onto the surface of this. And then you leave the corners free because you're going to be caulking at any change of plane. Any corners you need the caulk, not grout. The grout will eventually crack in a corner, so just leave that grout free. Oh, better turn it down or they're going to kick me off of here. All right. Yeah, I had to take this down because I'll get a copyright claim for that. So I do have a little bit of music in some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, like I said, this is the most hardest part of the whole process, is just packing it. And, you know, just do not worry about how much is really kind of still sitting on the tile. Try to get what you can, but your biggest focal point is just making sure all those grout joints are filled. Very simple concept, but if you don't do it, it's kind of painful. And like I said, you can't, you know, once this stuff is mixed, that's it. I mean, you're not going to be able to go back tomorrow and do anything. So if you're doing 12 by 24s or something like that, this definitely makes it a little bit easier because you don't have as many grout joints. This is a lot of grout joints. And you'll find if you do subway tile, that's definitely, you know, that's one of those things that I get, you know, I'm kind of, you know, subway tiles are never going away, I don't think, but they are a lot of work because there's just so many grout joints that you got to pay attention to and make sure they look good. And some people might overlook, you know, the amount of effort that it takes to make sure all these grout joints look good. And then, you know, these are a lot of tough calls. Some of these mosaics and stuff, they're really tough to gauge on how much you need. You know, but typically, like I said, on a tub surround like this, you get that 9-pounder, or if you got two of, I really only think you need half of it. And it's kind of a messy process, no doubt about it. You can see I keep switching arms there because, you know, honestly, as I get older, that tennis elbow, just doing all that trialing all these years, you can definitely feel it. So, you know, give you a little bit of a workout, no doubt about it. But any grout's really going to, you know, any grout, any of these premixes are kind of, it's pretty much the same a lot of ways. Traditional grouts are easier. There's no doubt about it. They are easier to spread, especially like an unsanded or something. So smooth and so easy. But who wants to do any maintenance these days? I don't think it's worthwhile to get a traditional grout these days. but I would charge more to do epoxy than what I would for a traditional grout. But, you know, you offset that by having to seal it too. So, you know, you have to, a lot of times the traditional grout, you can't just seal the next day. You have to wait a few days before you seal it. So you guys don't have music there. I had to turn that down. But yeah, I just really wanted to kind of show the full process. You know, some of this is kind of repeating itself here, but I'm not sure if there's any right or way wrong of filling those joints. I just kind of do that little pitter pattern deal. And I don't do the edges of the towel against the drywall here. I always caulk that area. Even if it's a Schluter edge, I don't think it looks very good grouted. So, okay, so in these little tight corners, I like to use these margin trowels that are Grout Floats. That really helps out to get all the grout in here. And there's nothing really too much fun about these little nooks, but you just got to try to get everything filled. And this is the one area that I kind of go against the recommendation of caulking all the corners. I usually just grout these corners. It just comes out neater, and you know, my thoughts are is if it ever did crack, you can always do the caulking at a later point. I guess you could do that on all areas of the tub, but in these little tiny niches, I just like to just grout all these corners. I've never really had one crack or have an issue, but it is recommended to use silicone on all change of planes. So any corner should have caulking according to the TCNA, but this is the one area that I kind of break the rules a little bit just because of the neatness and just the additional time to actually caulk that and make that look good. Yeah, caulking against that glass is a real pain. So I don't typically caulk those corners just because of the time consuming aspect of it. And like I was just saying, I never really had an issue with things cracking there. So take that for what it is, but I don't ever want to go against recommendations that Town Council of North America has. It's just, you know, just whatever, you know, sometimes it's just about what makes it easier and getting the job done, I guess. But all niches are miserable. There's nothing fun about them. Just having to pack them all in. But, you know, niches are something that a pre-mixed grout is a real pain in the neck to clean out right, because you end up having too much water and washing out your joints a lot of times. And that's where the epoxy doesn't have that issue. You can use a lot of water to clean it up, but you do want to scrub that tub after that initial deal and let everything set up a little bit for a period of time. But yeah, cleaning that tub is important. You don't want all that epoxy sitting all over it, and you could probably do a better job of protecting that tub. And I know I can definitely do that, but it's usually not an issue to scrub and clean up though. Okay, so with the epoxy, I would just make a nice little ball out of the rest of it, because you might need a little bit of additional grout to fill in some spots when you're cleaning it up. So you want to kind of just make it into something that's not going to dry up right immediately. So I just usually just take the rest of this and just put it into a ball, and then I can just pull some of this apart and fill in some areas that I need to when I'm doing the cleanup. Okay, so timing is somewhat important here, and I'm saying somewhat because there's a big variation of when you can still get this stuff off of here. So it's been about 20 minutes since I've done this back wall. The way that you want to test this, and it's really going to be different for everybody. It depends on the humidity that's in your home and the temperature. Right now it's 70 degrees, but it's pretty humid in here. So the way you test this is with the finger test. Just take your dry finger and press on the joint. If you're just molding the joint and you're not pulling anything off, like you basically, if it feels sticky and it's like pulling a little bit of the grout off onto your finger, just wait a few more minutes. So I'm still feeling a little bit of stickiness to it, and I'm still pulling some stuff off. I just kind of did this about 10 minutes ago. So it is still coming off on my finger. So I'm gonna give it another 10 minutes and then I'll test an area with the scrub pad. But basically you wanna be able to scrub this and not remove any of the grout. You just wanna basically mold it or basically finish it, tool it. So we'll give it another 10 minutes and try it again. So yeah, I did say 20 minutes at the beginning of that. I don't know why, but yeah, it was basically 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes is usually when I test that. But yeah, as long as it's not pulling out on your finger. Now I know somebody who's watching here is using a different type of epoxy, Troy. I know you're using Ardex. That is a stickier type of grout. I don't know. I mean, that kind of has the same concept, but from my experience with using Ardex WA, which is another great epoxy, it actually takes longer to dry. You actually have more working time with that stuff than the Laticrete. And I think you'll probably, most of the time when I'm using the Ardex, it's still feeling sticky. So don't be referencing this point on this. But on Laticrete, I feel pretty confident at this point that if it's not sticking, you're able to just press the joint in, you're good to go. And you can always just test the spot too with your sponge, and I'll get into that on the cleaning part here next. But yeah, I mean, again, I mean, after 20 minutes, I would start to be wanting to test something just to be careful. There's not really, I mean, you probably honestly have almost 35, 40 minutes where you can still get this stuff off. But once you really, it starts to feel like kind of rock hard in areas, then boy, you're going to have a miserable time getting that off. So, you know, just keep periodically testing it with your finger and seeing what it feels like. That's my best advice, is just if it's not coming out off of your dry finger, then you're about ready to start cleaning. So in here, I just have, again, those basic concepts, wiping it down with a damp sponge before going, packing those joints, making sure that they're all packed. You know, I give you a reference for this margin trowel. Definitely not necessary, but in something small like this, you know, I don't know how else you're really going to get that in there. It's really tough to get that in there with that grout float. And then this is another big key. You could probably got all day with this stuff. If you have it in a ball like that, you probably have all day to keep playing around with that and touching up stuff. But you really, really want to pay attention to what your final product looks like, because like I said, you can't go back. Once that stuff hardens up, that's it. Then you want to clean off your tub before you go starting doing that major cleaning. So we'll get into the cleaning here unless there's any questions. Does the grout fade less? I'd like to go with a darker grout, but I'm worried about it fading. I don't think so. I mean, it's, you know, the epoxy really locks that in there, so I don't think there should be any fading involved on anything like that. And that's more of a traditional grout issue, but fading isn't normally a description I hear a lot. So, yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, so we'll get into the cleaning part. This is about a 6-minute portion, and you'll find that this is where you shouldn't be too afraid about this. This really makes it fairly easy to clean up. I find it to be easier than a lot of regular grouts. Okay, so 10 minutes later, it's feeling much better. It's definitely not pulling out on my finger anymore. So let's just go ahead and test the spot. So with the epoxy grout, you're definitely going to have to get these scrubby pads. This is what you're going to be basically removing a lot of that excess off. So let's just do a small section here on the glass and see if we're going to get this grout off without running out of the joint. And we'll just take. So you're basically looking right there for, and that doesn't look so bad. I mean, it looks all whitish and everything, but what you're really looking for there when you're scrubbing that is to make sure that the joint isn't just completely falling apart. If it is, then you're going to want to wait another 5 or 6 minutes and then try it again. But the mosaic is a really good place to test that, because if it works here and you're able to scrub that down and smooth those grout joints, then you're going to have success with the rest. So the glass areas, these little mosaic, there's a lot of grout and all of that. So if this is ready to go, then you're all right. It just, you know, like I said, you'll notice this not working out so well when you're scrubbing this and you're actually pulling the grout out of the joint. If that's happening, then it's not set up enough. Wipe that off. Let's take a look at it. that's going to work fine. So as long as that's not running out of the joint, then you can just go ahead and just start scrubbing all of it in circular motions and just paying attention to the joint and trying to tool it smooth. You're not so much smooth, you're going to smooth it a little bit with the scrubby pad, but you're going to be doing more of the tooling with the actual sponge.
So you can see how much water.
That's one nice thing, like I was saying about the epoxy, is that you would never be able to use this kind of amount of water on a traditional grout. It would just run all the joints completely out. But with the epoxy, you know, you almost kind of need it to get the excess off and scrub it. So all I'm going to be doing is just kind of paying attention to my joints and trying to smooth them out with the scrubby pad. And then I'll further do that with the actual sponge when I go to wipe it off. But the circular motions will help remove it without dragging too much out of the joint.
So that's what I love about it, is that you can use that much water. You just can't do that on any other type of grout. And that's where these Ardex sponges make a big difference.
Kind of just go diagonally on it. And again, tooling the joint so that's nice and smooth. This is where you're going to be doing most of that work with the sponge, and it should just press a little bit and be easy to smooth out.
So I usually just go about halfway down the wall.
Okay, then I just take a microfiber cloth and just wipe this down. This will help eliminate spotting on the tile from the excess water drying with the epoxy. So if you just take a microfiber cloth and just wipe it down on the area that you just tooled. This will also give you a little bit of better chance to look at these joints better. Make sure they're nice and smooth. And then you work your way down.
And that's a big tip right there, is using that microfiber cloth. Using those things really eliminates that water spotting having issues. And I would say buy a dozen of those rags, of those. It has to be microfiber. You don't want to get any cloth ones. You don't want to have a rough surface. It needs to be a fine type of cloth so that you're not hurting the joints in any way. But the sponge is what you're really tooling those joints with, and then you're just wiping off that excess water. And that really makes a big difference in keeping anything from spotting or having haze left over. And you know, that even goes for the premixes as well. If you're doing a different type of grout that's a premix, again, those microfiber cloths really make a big world of difference of eliminating the spotting and the haze left over. But Troy, you asked me how long before it becomes a horror story or a nightmare. I would say, you know, it's hard to say. It's been a long time since I've been in that situation, but I would say up to about an hour. I think if you waited 45 minutes after you settle that grout, you might be into some trouble. And you don't want to have a fan on that room. Don't be having anything like any airflow blowing on you. You don't want those joints to be prematurely drying on the outside. So you probably wouldn't have that, but it's just, you know, you don't want to be putting a fan in there and trying to quicken up the setting. But yeah, I would say, I mean, when you're using Ardex WA, Ardex, like I said, even lasts longer. There's been times around here that I've had to wait 40 minutes just before I could even clean it. So that Ardex WA definitely lasts a really long time. Is a little bit quicker. So, but I really feel like, you know, 40 minutes after you set it, that's where you might end up starting to have some issues.
That's what I mean. You don't want to be just like setting that grout, take lunch, and then come back. Oh, I'm going to clean it after lunch. You want to be doing this whole process all together. So that'll be like the initial wash. And basically a couple hours later, we'll go over it again. Okay, so that's the cleanup process. Like I said, I really find it to be really easy. Like the biggest pain point of epoxy is if you needed to touch something up the next day. That's really the biggest problem with any of it. So yeah, flipping your sponge, Brendan, definitely makes a big difference. That's why I do recommend having at least 2 of these Ardex sponges on hand, because they are going to fill up. It's going to fill up that sponge. If you get the cheap sponges, you're going to probably need double that, because those ones really kind of gunk up really quickly. Like the more holes and pores that you have in a cheap sponge, the less it's going to last. That's why I think whatever they did with these Ardex sponges, it lasts a really long time. But typically a tub surround like this, I'll go through 2 of them, and I always like to have a third one on hand just in case it gets gunked up. Once you start, once it's completely white on one side and it's like all sticky, it almost doesn't really pull anything off. But that's a good tip. Always flipping your sponge to turn it around will allow that to, the more, the cleaner the sponge and the more that you can wipe off that excess, that's really what you're trying to do. But again, that microfiber cloth is really what's going to save the day after you wipe off the water. It's just drying that up, looking up at the light that's in your shower, trying to look at to see if you have a window in, you're going to be able to really highlight, the glossiness of your tile. So you'll be able to really see whether you have any haze left over. And there's a lot of ways to go about, if you didn't do all of everything that you were supposed to do, and getting that clean, there are epoxy haze removers that you can use that is a little bit harsher, but you're not going to be able to do that till the next day. So really try your best effort to remove all of that excess. And so yeah, and some tiles are going to be harder than others. I mean, these are just regular basic ceramic, high gloss not porcelain, but ceramic tiles. A traditional 12 by 24 tile that has a little bit of texture to it, it's almost kind of easier to clean. Depends on the kind of texture, but the high gloss tiles are the ones that, usually you can see every little bit of anything that you left on it. The honed type of tiles, it's really hard to see anything. So it really ends up being somewhat easier on, like a stone or something that's not high gloss, I should say. So yeah, first 10 minutes, test that grout, test it again. Try not to have, basically don't start on it until it stops pulling out on your finger. But testing your sponge or testing that white scrubby on the border is the best way to go about seeing whether your joints are going to run and when it's ready. So, but in some ways, it's better to, you just want to pay attention to it. You want to keep testing it. You don't want to be really sitting back and taking a phone call. You want to be there the whole time, because it can, it's not going to really like just speed up and get away from you, but once, half hour later, once it does, it just becomes a lot more scrubbing. It's just a lot more work to get it off. And you're going to have a harder time actually molding those joints to look nice in that joint. And there's nothing you can really do to soften it up at that point. So there's microfiber cloths. I can't tell you enough about how well those things work. And then this is the final wash. This is a few hours later. So I actually ended up painting the bathroom before this process. I should probably highlight that, just mentioning that. But you want to get some Windex with vinegar. So the vinegar is what's going to make the difference with getting any additional haze off. Just because that the vinegar, I guess I'm not really sure exactly the chemical reaction that vinegar has, but something about it really helps remove any of this extra haze. So, okay, a few hours later, I'd say about 4 hours later after this grout has set, you can just use a little bit of Windex with vinegar, or just even water with vinegar, and that'll help get any additional epoxy off. If you have epoxy left over after that, then you're going to want to use an epoxy remover, which you can use the following day. But typically, if you use a microfiber cloth and then a little bit of vinegar, water, or Windex, you should be good. But waiting for it, this has to be set up. You want to do this like at least 3 to 4 hours later. So we're just going to spray this. I don't really see much residue, but I'm just going to wipe this all down anyways and just ensure that I don't have any. Use a scrubby pad to really make sure that you got everything off of there.
And yeah, going back over with the microfiber cloth again.
And I always like look up at the tile while the light's shining down to see if there's any streaks from the epoxy. And this is going to be the easier stage of removing any of the streaking or haze that might be left. But typically on a gloss tile, it's really not that bad. It's really usually comes off pretty well on that first wash.
Yeah, and you can use that Windex with vinegar. I always have a bottle of that for each bathroom remodel because you use it for all types of different things, and the vinegar really helps clean things well. And I use that because it's clear. It makes it nicer. I don't like using the stuff with the dye in it. That blue dye can actually stain some things. I've had some issues. Not necessarily the epoxy, but I use it for caulking and everything else too, to just allow you to keep that caulking from smearing on the tile. So get some clear Windex on that, and then I just basically highlight that in here as well. This is like basically, like I said, just something you can reference really quickly on your phone or something like that of the day that you're doing it. But other than that, yeah, that's really what I had for today. And again, like if you're in my course, you can always ask me a question here. What I recommend for other grouts. So like I said, my window of grouts are getting smaller this day because I just oh boy, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of grouts out there that I'm not real happy with, and I thought that I wouldn't use again. For years, I used to use Bostic quartz lock, and it was a premix grout, and it's one of my major problems I'm seeing with some of these other premixes is how gritty they are, how textured, how sandy the grains are. One of my pet peeve grouts that I know a lot of contractors love using is the Mapei, Mapei CQ. I am not a fan of that stuff at all. It's so gritty, and I just think any type of gritty grout, anything that has a real rough surface to it, it's just going to be easier for soap scum and everything else to stick to. So I think it's harder to clean for the client to clean, and I just don't see the point of it. This Spectralock is a very fine consistency. Like if you were to compare it from a traditional sanded grout, I would say it's half of that. It's definitely a fairly smooth. It's not quite as smooth as a unsanded grout, but it's definitely pretty smooth. The other type of epoxy I would recommend is Ardex WA. This stuff is really great. Really not much different than the Spectralock, but like I said, the biggest thing with this, it ends up being sticky. And it's harder to tell when to wash, but typically it's about the same amount of time, 20, 25 minutes. And really the biggest, Troy, I know you're watching here, the biggest thing I would say is testing an area with it and making sure that you're not washing out that joint. If you're washing out any of those joints, then you want to wait a little bit longer. But the biggest problem with the Ardex WA is that the stickiness that's involved. So that vinegar spray, you're really going to need that a couple hours later because you'll probably still feel some stickiness of the WA. So it's still a great product. It's just that to me, it's just not as easy as the Spectralock. The other grout, and I'll be going into this because this is what I actually used for the floor. This is something that might be my number one deal overall. I'm still kind of waiting for the
the comments to be in from a lot of the bigger contractors, people that are using this all the time. Put it this way, I use this for everything else except for white grout. White, I'm just still a little bit reserved about because I want to make sure that, it's definitely staying as stain resistant as what this is claimed to be. Now, granted, Laticrete called it Spectralock 1. This is basically right off of their Spectralock, their biggest selling point, their epoxy, their standard epoxy. So they must feel that this is just as good as that. I'm just not quite convinced yet that it has the stain resistance that normal epoxy does. And I don't know what their statement is on it. I should call them up to find out what they say about that. But this is a really great grout. And what's nice about this is that you don't have to worry about it if you miss something. You can always touch this up later because it's a pre-mixed bucket and you can just use it. Now, I do think that this has a little bit more of a sanded consistency than the epoxy, than the stuff I just used. It does have a little bit more of a grainy feel to it, but it's not that much different. And I'll be demonstrating this on the floor, but so far been very, very, very pleased with this stuff. As far as any of the premixes go, I would probably lean towards doing this one. Like I said, the stuff that I would stay away from, I just don't like, is the Mapei CQ. I'm not a big fan of it at all. Other grouts that I'm recommending right now, or that I still really like, and I'm not selling out Laticrete. I think they just make a good product when it comes to some of their grouts. But is Laticrete Permacolor. This is more of a traditional type of grout. You can get it unsanded or sanded, and it basically just has a color packet that you add to the mix. But this stuff is a high performance, so it's not like epoxy, but it's high performance where the cementitious grout hardens so. Like from what I understand, it hardens so well that you don't have to seal it or do any maintenance to it. So it does have the qualities of a traditional grout, but then you don't have to seal it or do anything with it in the future. It is a fast setting grout, so it's definitely it'll take you just the same amount of time as doing that epoxy probably. But it is a fast setting. I like the fast setting ones. Like I said, I don't really use any traditional grouts anymore. I don't see the point. But the traditional grouts always took a long time for them to dry before you can scrub them. And then they would always have like a dusting haze over it that you'd have to address. Whereas this stuff, it's 25 minutes. You can, you basically get that towel already and go. And then you can just go ahead and start caulking your corners almost in the same day. So I do like this stuff a lot. Like I said, it's the high performance. And then the other one is by Mapei. I really like this Ultra Plus FA. Only thing I would say about either one, either the Permacolor or this, since it is fast setting, if you're in a dry environment, probably refrain from using this because it might end up setting up on you a little too quickly. This stuff it can flash on you and you can have some trouble actually getting this cleaned. This typically is you apply it. This is a lot easier. This is more like the traditional grout that you're bedding, so it's a lot less work packing the joints. But basically within 10 minutes you're cleaning it. And if you have a really dry environment and you took a really long time to fill all those joints, you might end up having a trouble time getting those joints nice and smooth. So that right now, these are only the 5 grouts that I really recommend at this point. And out of all of them, the epoxy is what I've been really using for the last several years and have been very pleased with. I used it in every single one of my bathrooms in my home and all the floors. I have, tons of square feet of tile in my house, and I've used all of the, this epoxy, and it's lasted a really long time. So, see if there's any questions here. Yeah, thanks, Troy. I'm really glad this is helping you out. I really hope, I can't wait to see what your end product is. What else I was going to show you? I guess really, you know what? I'll show you this. This is at the end of my live stream here. So if for some reason this is not here and I end up cutting out at this point, it's because of a conversation I used to have with my old business partner. But this is the channel that I used to be on. This is just to demonstrate the permacolor. So I still have all these videos on his channel over there. And he's making all the money and not paying me. So someday I'm going to get into a big topic about that. But right now, you know, I think it's best for me to remain still quiet about it. But this is just kind of referencing the Latacrete
Grout
product
by Latacrete. What I think is one of the coolest things about this permacolor is that basically you get these color packets this would be basically your base, your grout base, and then you get a color packet to get the color of the grout that you want. So for instance, this bathroom, we're going to be doing the mocha on the floor, and then we're going to do bright white for the walls. So what I think is just awesome about this is that I can buy one bag of this and have enough to do my floor and my walls for the bathroom with no waste, essentially. Normally you get grout bags, you buy one bag of your colored white and then one bag of whatever your other color is going to be, and you basically use a portion of that bag and the rest of it's kind of thrown out. So I think this is a great economic way to get all of the grout that you need for your bathroom and not create too much waste. But the other nice thing about this is that it's a high performance grout. It can go down to 1/16 inch grout joint. So typically you're not going to really have much, you're pretty much going to solve all of your issues. There's not usually too many situations that you go below a 16th inch for the grout joint. But the other nice thing is that since it's high performance, there's no sealing of the grout, so you don't have to seal it.
You could watch that video. Just leave a comment and say, hey, why don't you pay Steve for this video? Because he's making all the money off of that channel, not paying me a dime. Anyways, there's a lot of great things. I'm proud of what I did over there. I put a lot of effort into that channel, and they're still all sitting up there. So, I mean, you know, please stick to my channel. But I just wanted to reference the permacolor there. And then I just wanted to show you this. This was a bathroom that I did earlier last year that I have footage of, but I can't really use. But this was a really awesome shower. I was really hoping to show this to everybody, but since Jeff no longer, you know, basically cut me out of the whole deal, I'm not able to use a lot of this footage. But this is the Mapei CQ that we used, because actually the manufacturer of this cement tile actually specified to use Mapei CQ. So I don't know why or how they did that, but that's what they wanted us to use. And I'll just show you a little reference of this, of how gritty it was. I just was not happy with how gritty CQ is. And I think that a white grout being this gritty, especially on the floor, it looks awesome. It looks absolutely beautiful. But I think that you're going to have a hard time cleaning all these joints with that stuff. So it just really, man, it just had such, you can hear the grit. It's just so thick. And it's a real pain in the neck to clean because it's, you know, you're using a sponge and you're wiping it off, and it's just gunking up the sponge really, really quickly. So, you know, they're selling this stuff everywhere. I know a lot of contractors that love it. I'm just not a big fan of it. So, anyways, I just want to show you a quick clip of that. But this was a really awesome shower. If you ever do cement tile, the pictures don't even do it justice. Because the real vintage look of this cement tile is absolutely beautiful. So, you know, if you want to get into some really neat tile work, cement tile is definitely where it's at. So, but yeah, so check out my course if you haven't already. Let me go back to, I'll just get myself bigger here. Where am I at? Yeah. So yeah, bathroomremodeling.teachable.com. You can always check that out. And again, thanks guys for being here tonight. I hope you got some value out of that. And yeah, my next one will be getting into part 2 of day 6. So finishing up that day, basically grouting the floor, painting, giving you some tips on that. But really it's about staying organized and getting through each day so that you can accomplish this in a 7-day period. So thanks so much. And I'll notify you on the next one. Thanks so much, guys.